Committee meeting of the Law and Ordinance Committee. The chairperson, Lynn Snee, is not with us this evening. I will be standing in for her stead. I'm Councilman Bob Phillips, and to my right is Councilman Todd Sievert. We're here to talk about a moratorium on permits allowing adult-use cannabis operations. And Mr. Titterington, you're going to lead that staff report.
So the November 7th election, there was a ballot issue regarding legalizing recreational marijuana use with various restrictions. That was I guess an initiative ballot issue. It was not a constitutional issue, but it would amend the Ohio Revised Code, or it will, effective December 7th. In order for the staff and the law director, who is in the audience, if you have any specific questions, to formulate, to really understand it, get some guidance from the state and as well as the Ohio Municipal League on our behalf, we would recommend strongly that that council imposes a 180-day moratorium, so that in particular regarding the zoning code, we can make the recommendations through the Planning Commission and bring those to you. So in the meantime, the moratorium would be to not accept any or grant any permits allowing adult-use cannabis operators from establishing. And again, that would be 180 days. If it would need to be extended for any period of time beyond the 180 days, we of course would come back and ask for that extension of the City Council. With the December 7th effective date coming up very quickly, we are asking for emergency legislation.
I don't have any other questions, or my only comment is that regardless of any personal opinion that I may or may not have, we do need to look at how the voters in our city did vote on this with whatever recommendation comes out in the future. We may also want to readdress the medical marijuana side of things. It's part and parcel to the whole package. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Sievert.
No, I think it makes prudent sense to have Mr. Kerber see how the Municipal League is suggesting communities handle this, and I would support emergency legislation. Grant, do you think that's enough time, 180 days, you should get a opinion?
Good evening, Grant Kerber, City of Troy Law Director. Mr. Sievert, yeah, I am hopeful, with just how this law change came into effect, with it just being on the ballot earlier this month and passing, and the effective date being December 7th. It's sort of hard to wrap your brain around everything, and I do know that the new law specifically permits a city or a legislative authority to prohibit or limit the number of establishments within the city. And it's important to note that this moratorium would only stop new permits for being issued for what the medical marijuana they call the cultivators, growers, and processors and dispensaries. This would just prevent those establishments from being established during the moratorium or until such time as the moratorium is lifted. It would not do anything to prohibit other provisions in that law. The other provisions in that law allow for people to have up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana on their person and to cultivate, home grow their own, up to either 6 or 12 plants, depending upon the circumstances. So this moratorium will not impact the other operation of the law. It will simply prevent any of those facilities from opening up until council has an opportunity to make an informed decision as to whether or not that's one question, whether or not to allow these facilities. And if council determines that it's appropriate to allow these facilities, okay, well, what sort of zoning district should they go into, and things of that time. And just with how quickly this law becomes effective, it was really pretty much impossible to have that groundwork laid out prior to the effective date. So I believe that's the rationale for the urgency in coming together and say, hey, look, let's take a measured approach, figure out what's best for Troy.
Thank you. You've answered all the questions that I would have had off of that. Any other council folks have any questions? Yes, Mr. Wood.
I was trying to find it today. The law and the writing of the bill was a little ambiguous to me. Is it not that if you want to open up a store or business that you have to get permission from the state as well, not only the municipality, but my understanding of it?
There is no doubt that if somebody wants to open a dispensary or a processing facility or cultivate it, they do have to get a license from the state. Now, this is, but this law, and if you're looking for it, it's Chapter 3780 in the Ohio Revised Code. But the law has a provision that does grant and makes abundantly clear that the cities retain their ability to, make zoning decisions.
So, but they couldn't open up a business before getting permission from or getting a license from the state?
Correct. But that wouldn't, that has the potential for, if they do get a license from the state, it's a question of, should they, what does our zoning code allow for that? And normally, we don't have, our zoning code presently states that just no medical marijuana facilities can locate. Now, there's a change in with this new law, a new business, essentially. Before, there was never recreational marijuana dispensaries or anything like that. The zoning code, usually if a use isn't specified in the zoning code, the administration tries to find the closest use to what's being proposed that is identified in our zoning code, so something similar to that. So there could be an argument that our zoning code would allow the establishment of these in certain zoning districts that the city might not find to be appropriate. And I think that's, just with, the 30-day window of time for the effective date, I think that there's been there's been an expression of need to do some sort of study on this.
So I bring it up because, the information I was trying to look up this weekend and today, it seemed to me, at least from what I could tell, again, you read one thing, you read a different thing, is that there's not anticipation the state's going to issue any license before the summer or fall of next year. Is this how I saw it?
My recollection is that the law mandates that, and I believe it's under the auspices of the Department of Commerce, they have to create a whole new state agency. And I believe the law says that they're supposed to be up and running within 9 months is the target date. So it's probably unlikely that any certificate will come out. Nobody will be licensed within that 9 period of time, but there's also some automatic grandfathering in of if you have a medical dispensary license, and I don't want to speak authoritatively on that because there's a lot to digest, as you mentioned. But there was some provisions in there that there's either some preference or automatic entitlement to a license if you have a medical marijuana license for a facility. So those people, even if, I get your point that they might not have a license for 9 months, and why would a moratorium be necessary? But there may be some provisions in there that once this agency hits the ground, that these people have an automatic entitlement to a license that would allow them to establish in Troy in some district that you may not want.
Thank you, sir. Any other councilmen in the audience? Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions on this? Thank you, Grant. Mr. Rozell, is the comment worthy of everybody here? No? Okay. No one else has any questions or comments on this? How do you wish to proceed?
I would follow staff recommendation and ask for emergency legislation.
It's unanimous with the committee that's present to move forward as the staff is recommending with emergency legislation. Any other items to come before the L&O committee? Okay. Then